Good afternoon and welcome to um, conversational meetings with me, Patricia Nkwane. We are called Africa in Conversation. We talk issues that are concerned to Africa. And today we are talking business, the state of business in Africa. And I'm joined by Dr. Roche from South Africa and Mr. Taiwo from Nigeria. We'll be talking the state of business in Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you get to enjoy our conversations today. Mr.
Thank
Roche,
you.
thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Roche.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. Taiwo, there must be something wrong with his mic there, but we are going to continue with our conversations. I think let's just start off with what is happening around the world today. COVID-19, that's the issue that is at hand today. Dr. Roche, how would you
Mm.
say COVID-19 has affected Africa's economy?
I think, thank you for the question. I think, you know, um, just like anywhere else in the world, COVID has actually put a brake on most of the, on the continent's economy. So we have seen a whole lot of lockdowns, and as a result of the lockdown, a lot of people who actually dependent on informal markets were left, in a very precarious position where they could not secure, a living, especially those who live hand to mouth. And you understand that the bulk of Africa's economy is what we call informal. So, so when you close, informal markets, so when you close that, people don't have much to depend on uh, for a living. So what we have seen is throughout the continent, it has halted the economies of most of the African continent. So, and in the process, what it has done is it has worsened or exacerbated, hunger, poverty, and we've seen a lot of people lose their jobs. So we are quite a number of steps back as a result of the pandemic, and we're not even out of the woods yet. I mean, it's still there, but
Yeah.
yeah, still have quite a lot of work to do to come out of it.
Yeah. You mentioned that because of COVID-19, we kind of went steps back and that it is worsened the state of poverty in Africa and also concerning the fact that a lot of people have lost jobs. But the bigger question that I believe is in the heart of every African person right now is that would we see Africa recovering from this pandemic
So say again,
anytime soon?
the, just repeat the last part.
Do we see Africa recovering from this?
We have to recover. We have to recover. Will we? I'm sure we will. You know what the interesting part is about COVID. The interesting part about COVID is we have a situation where Africa has got the largest young population in the world, and what we know, we're still learning quite a lot about the disease. But what we know for a fact is that people who are at the extreme dangers are the elderly, so to speak. So Africa has got a big young population. So far, we have not really experienced such catastrophic loss of life. Even though I must caution, I'm saying this because what we know also is that there are some countries that have not really been reporting numbers on. But what we can get a sense is that it has not been catastrophic in a sense in the sense of losing of life. So, and I think that's a good thing, right, for Africa, that we'll be able to build from what we had, in much as we will not have lost quite a lot of people in comparison to other parts of the world. So that's for me a number one. It's a good thing that we still have the numbers of the people. We still have the young energy. We still have young people who are energetic to take the continent forward. So So I think for me, from one sitting, it's a good position. Of course, what it then does is we need to start rethinking about how do we rebuild the continent. What comes to me, number one, what comes to me is the importance, once again, the importance of social entrepreneurs in the continent, to deal with issues of health, the gaps in health, the gaps in energy, the gaps in internet connection, right? Pretty much like what you're struggling with now. So all these things require entrepreneurs who will be able to go out there and just build from those issues.
Yeah.
We don't need the next Mark Zuckerberg. We don't need the next social media app. What we need entrepreneurs who are going to deal with urgent matters. Health is urgent. Energy is urgent. Electricity, food is urgent. We are picking up now that if there's one thing in this pandemic that has been able to continue to sell is food. People need to eat, right? We are going to need to fix education because again we have lost such a huge amount. And now with the whole thing of putting people in a room, we need to start looking at what are the other ways that we can educate our people. So what the pandemic has done is it has given us a sense of what's critical for us to start working on in terms of rebuilding.
Okay. Yeah, I do understand that. But because now we are looking into measures of what we can do to seize the moment in the kind of situation that we are in. And there has been quite a lot of noise about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin issues and stuff. But the question that's there is, how can a capitalist economy impact Africa?
You see, we talk Bitcoin, we can't even connect online, right? So here we are talking fourth industrial revolution things, while we are still struggling with third industrial revolution issues, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to start being, sort of taking a step back and say, are we even ready to start talking Bitcoins and all these things? We can't even keep the lights on, right? So let's take a step back and say, guys, what are the real issues that we're struggling with, and let's fix those. So you are raising an important question in terms of, in the capitalistic world, and I think slowly but surely, what has been coming out globally is questions around the capitalistic model. Is this
Yeah.
model really working for us? Is this model really taking humanity, not just Africa, but is this model taking humanity forward? Now, here's the thing, though. Here's an interesting thing. Now, if you look at how, for instance, with the 1998 financial crisis and how the banks were funded, were seized, right? And what happened subsequent to the banks being bailed out is we had these executives who were drawing huge amount of bonuses, right? And as we came through in the 2000s, that trend has been continuing, where the gap between the CEO and the lowest level paid person is even wider than it was, before. So you have a situation where the captains of industry are the ones who are coining it, but the poor people are getting poorer at the same time. So the question therefore comes to say, but is this model sustainable, right? Is this really working? We love it, we've grown under it, it's been working, but is this really working for the benefit of the greater good? And I think this is where you have a movement like Occupy Wall Street movement coming through, where people are saying, but this thing is not working, right? We need to start looking at this model because really, it's actually widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots, right? And is there something in between? Maybe there's something in between. And hence, when I started this interview, I said the importance of having social entrepreneurs who are not only just going to make money, but are going to solve a whole lot of issues that we're struggling with: poverty, unemployment, hunger, and all these things. And I think we need to sort of say, we need to start questioning a whole lot of things. We need to start questioning a whole lot of things. Is this capitalistic system working? I mean, if you have someone like Jeff Bezos making billions in a pandemic, right? And,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of people like, okay, so what's going on? One person benefiting, millions of people still struggling. like, no. Something is not adding up here. So we need to start looking at. It's not an easy thing to do because change is not easy. Change is not easy. It's very difficult. So
Yeah.
and you could have a whole lot of pushbacks from people to say, no. This language, capitalistic, profit at all costs, is not really working for humanity. It's working for a few people, right? It's working for a few people, but it's not working for many. Do we still want that kind of system?
Uh-huh. Okay, Mr. Taiwo, you just joined us, and we were talking about the capitalist economy. Mr. Taiwo, I think he's still having some bit of challenges there with his sound. We are going to continue talking. We're going to continue in our conversations. The other question that I have for you, Dr. Roche, some time back as I was going through the internet, I came across this statistic that said like around 80% of Africa's population growth is happening in cities, which is making us one of the largest urbanized region in the world. And then the bigger question is, how does this, in this moment, affect the demand and supply in Africa? How does it affect the investments and everything that is happening in terms of business in Africa?
So I mean, it's I mean, not urbanization. Urbanization is happening at a very faster rate globally in the world. But you're right, in Africa, we get to see a lot of movements of people moving from outside uh, major cities going into major cities. So urbanization is taking place at a faster rate, and for a number of reasons. One of the reasons being that there's obviously this opportunities are centered in major cities, right? So people have this feeling that in order for me to have a better standard of living, I need to move from the rural areas and I need to move to major cities.
To the
And that's
cities.
where, that's where I'll have a better life there. So what we have done is we have neglected, other parts of the countries and we're focused mainly in urban cities. It's got its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages, though, that I picked up also is the fact that you have this congestion, right, happening in one area. And as a result, you have things like, for instance, climate change, right, with regard to traffic, emissions, and all those things. So people are congested in one place, lots of traffic, lots of emissions, and that on its own has got an impact on the climate change. And if you remember very well that part of the SDG is that in 2020, in the next 10 years, 2030, we need to halt the way that we are actually emitting fossil fuels in the environment. And also that's one thing. The other thing as well is as we move away from the rural areas, from the outskirts, then we are putting huge pressure on cities. And by so doing, you actually have a situation where who's going to who's going to do farming, who's going to feed us, right? Because we are
Yeah.
all now, and you know what happens in urban cities. No one has got time to. We all want to get into financial services and all those kind of things. So who's going to
Yeah.
feed us? So that also is putting pressure on farming and agriculture because that often is outside the urban city. And if we neglect that, we are then going to find ourselves with the issues of food security, which is one of the big issues in the world, right? That food security is not guaranteed in the next 20 years, right? The world's population will be at about 9 billion, right? The land is remaining the same. There's climate change that's taking place, and climate change affects agriculture because of erratic weather conditions. We can't grow food as we know it, right? And that also what it does is it puts pressure
Yeah.
on the climate, it puts pressure on farming. So there has to be a way that we rethink how we do development, especially in the continent, and sort of try and build for the long term. And I think it's doable. We just need to start thinking creatively.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Let me just take a moment there and apologize. We were to have a conversation that was to include Mr. Taiwo from Nigeria, and he seems to be having problems with his internet connection. Yeah. But then the question, I think this question, basically I had it for him, but you can also answer it. Currently, we're having a bigger problem of poor infrastructure in Africa. Yeah, but then one may ask, does this in a way affect the investments that are coming into Africa? Does it affect us? Does it affect the startups in terms of business in Africa?
So yes, it does. You know, because of the fact that we can't connect with China, for instance, right? The fact that we're having this of infrastructure of what we call internet connectivity, right? That also affects how
Yeah.
businesses happen. You know, in terms of trading, in terms of connecting with entrepreneurs from other countries. So yes, absolutely, it does affect. The lack of infrastructure is a challenge for the continent, right? You know, the lack of electricity, for instance, the lack of road infrastructure, because if you don't have roads, it becomes difficult to move goods and services, right? If you don't have proper roads, it becomes very difficult to move goods and get services. You know, the lack of electricity, right? You know, when there's always power cuts, it affects productivity, and therefore it affects our competitiveness globally. So yes, you're spot on. There is that challenge, that lack of infrastructure has a negative impact on the development, productivity of a country, development of entrepreneurs, and business moving forward. That goes without saying. But I think, on the other hand, this presents opportunities for entrepreneurs. The question that has always been there, though, is does development come, like does infrastructure and all these things come before development? So in other words, for us to develop, we need to have these things firstly, and then we can develop. Or do we need to have that high spirit of entrepreneurship that comes before development? So in other words, which comes first, right? Do we need more entrepreneurs and then development will follow entrepreneurs? Or do we need entrepreneurs? Do we need development first? And once we have development, entrepreneurs will follow suit. What I know for a fact is that we need more entrepreneurs first, then development will follow suit. And I'll tell you why I say that, right? Look at, for instance, you know, the whole debate of development of infrastructure before development, right? South Africa 2010, we hosted the World Cup, right? We built all this massive infrastructure, right? Stadiums and all these other things, right? And then one of the arguments that were made is that once we host the World Cup, once we build this infrastructure, once we have this amazing show party, you know, this global party that lasts for a month, once we have it in our country, all the development that we need will take place. In other words, you know, jobs will be created, you know, poverty will go down, and all these kind of things. What we know for a fact now, you know, 20 years later, is that we actually have some of the most unequal society in the world post the World Cup. Unemployment has sitting at about 40% post the World Cup. We are sitting with high poor levels post the World Cup. So now we need to start reflecting to say, but you know, are we saying that developments need to come first? Infrastructure needs to come first before development? I'm not convinced. I'm actually thinking that we need to have strong entrepreneurs. We need to have hungry entrepreneurs. We need to have people who have got the vision, right? And then, due to them having the vision and kickstarting all the small things, development will be a byproduct, right? Infrastructure will be a byproduct of. Let me give you one last example. I don't know if you have time. Let me give you one last example. Now, if you look at, for a very long time in the US, they've been trying to build infrastructure for a very long time, roads and whatever, right? And they didn't have the budget, they didn't have you know, the skills to do the roads, right? And then came this guy called Henry Ford. Henry Ford comes and does this car that is universally in the US accepted. It's affordable, it's durable, the Model T, right? And he does this car in a period where there were other cars, but those cars were expensive They were not accessible to the masses of the people. So if you have two cars, it doesn't justify you building a road for two cars because cars at the time were expensive. He comes, he says, no, 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 no. I found a way of innovating a car, making it cheaper and affordable to the people, and I'm going to manufacture it. And he does that. And this car catches fire, right? People love it, they buy it, the Model T becomes a runaway success. Now, what you have a situation where the masses of the people, through an innovator, one person, through an innovator, an entrepreneur, are able to then access cars, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of cars, right? And as they access these cars, thousands and thousands of them, then there's a need because now,
There's another need for the road.
now there's a need for the road, right? Now you have entrepreneurs who ignited development infrastructure, right? And then because now I can visit Patricia in Gaborone, there needs to be a proper road for my car. Then there's a road. Oh, by the way, before I get to Gaborone, I need to pour petrol, right? So there's a need for us to build filling stations, right? So there's more and more filling stations are opening, right? Because there's more and more filling stations that are opening, there's a need for us to mine coal because we need to convert that coal into petrol for me to get to Gaborone. So there's a need for coal. So then what we see, I can get to Botswana and come back. There's a need for trade between cities. We can get goods from here. We can get to Botswana, and so one innovator came up with an innovation that drove development of cars, created jobs for people who can build cars, who can build roads, who can build filling stations, created a need for us to have mining people who are working in mines to take out the coal. Now, this is what we need, right? We need entrepreneurs, and this is the argument that has always been said. Innovation comes before development. If you don't have innovation, you can build all these beautiful things, right? They will sit there as white elephants, like we have in South Africa. We have beautiful stadiums that we built as a result of beautiful, amazing to watch. But where's Bafana Bafana? Not like they're winning the AFCON. So for me, you can have the star stadiums and everything. That is not a prerequisite for development. Innovation, entrepreneurs precedes development.
The reason why I was asking this is because we have had so many excuses of people thinking, we need the right infrastructure for us to venture into this into this. But the way you put it up in such a way that it's quite understandable, and it makes a lot of sense to understand the fact that we need people that are willing to stand up to something so that they could actually be the one that are radical into bringing the infrastructure that we need and the change that we need. Now, as we are just about to close, one more question that I'm just curious about. We have a lot of youth-run businesses starting up in Africa, but for some funny reason, again, we have a lot of them closing up. 2 years down the line, a year down the line, closing up. And the bigger question with most, it will be an issue of funding. With most, it will be an issue of industry. But then I feel like one way or the other, it also has something to do with culture. But my question to you would be, how does our culture here in Africa actually affect the business setup in Africa?
So, culture is very important. I mean, and for a number of reasons, right? One of them being that do we have a culture that encourages entrepreneurship, right? Or do we have a culture that says go to school, get good grades, get a good job, work until you go to retirement, they'll give you a gold watch, look at that watch until you die. That has been the culture that we've been having for a very long time. When you get good grades, go overseas, get a good education, come work. We have not really have a culture that says, yes, get good grades, yes, go to school, but when you're done, start your own business, right? Start your own business, build a legacy, employ other people. So that culture has to change. Often entrepreneurship has been a last resort. Oh, you're struggling at school. Oh, you can't get a job, right? Maybe try this entrepreneurship thing. And if it should happen that as you are trying this entrepreneurship thing, there's a small little thing that you can find, a piece job or something, leave this entrepreneurship thing, go and do this job. So entrepreneurship has always been the last resort. It's not been front and center. We've not really been intentional about creating entrepreneurs. So I think that culture has to change. We need to now start being more assertive in saying to our kids, yes, become a doctor, yes, become a lawyer, yes, become an engineer and accountant. But as soon as you qualify, start your own engineering firm, start your own law firm, start your own accounting practice, and grow it. Don't just, one of the things that we have is this silo mentality. Don't just start your own law firm and you just become your own law firm as an individual. That's not building a legacy business. Let's all partner up and build this business that will outlive us, right? Decades when we are gone, this name still remains. Deloitte and Touche. I'm an accountant. I work for Deloitte. I don't even know Deloitte. I don't even know who this guy was, but his legacy still remains even today. So we need to start, approaching business from that context, and it starts with culture. The culture that if you fail, we laugh at you. I mean, that has been a culture. We laugh at you. You are a failure. And things like that. Newspapers put you in the front as a huge scandal and things like that. We need to change that perception, right? When Mark Zuckerberg met Obama, for instance, when Mark Zuckerberg met Obama for the first time, the hero of the show was Mark Zuckerberg. It was Obama meeting Mark Zuckerberg, right? It was not Mark Zuckerberg meeting Obama. It was as if, eventually Obama gets the opportunity to meet Mark Zuckerberg. Because in the US, entrepreneurs are the stars of the show. Politicians come and go. But in Africa, we find that politicians are the stars of the show. They don't even want to leave because they know they're the stars of the show. So we need to start changing that mentality, that mindset, that culture of saying soccer stars, actors, politicians are these people that we all need to aspire to. We need to start saying that entrepreneurs are the people that we need to aspire to. And that starts with culture. You're talking about failure, for instance. We're not failing enough, right? We're not failing enough. We need to fail far more than we succeed, because as we fail, we actually learn more. We learn more from failure than from success. So we need to fail more. And the reason why we're not failing more is because of the stigma attached to failing. Because if I fail, if I go back home because I went bankrupt, people are going to laugh at me. I'm going to be the laughing stock. My parents are going to feel like they are failures as parents and things like that. But what we need is we need to be able to say, it's a good thing you failed. Now you are better off. Let's give you more money. Go out there. Because once you have failed, you know what not to do. And that's what we need. Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error until you get it right. The more we have this trial and error, the more that you're going to have people who are going to succeed at the end. But the less trial and error we have, the less that you're going to have people who are succeeding at the end. And that is a culture from our parents, a culture from ourselves as peers. We need to encourage each other to fail more. A culture from the media that it needs to support entrepreneurs. And as they fail, we celebrate those failures instead of laughing at them. The culture at government to say, yes, I give you funding, you failed. I don't blacklist you. I actually give you because you are smarter now, right? So you go and you try again until you get it right. But by so saying, I'm not saying fail for the sake of failing, right? I'm saying fail moving forward, make new mistakes, don't make the same mistakes that you've been making. Then you're not failing smart, right? So we need to be smart in how we fail. We need to fail forward. We need to fail quickly, because as you do that, you actually pick up. This is not going to work. Let me save money and not proceed forward. Let me change. Let me pivot and let me try this, right? Because now you are smarter. I mean, if you look at businesses that Mark Zuckerberg started, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and all those things, they have failed before. Richard Branson will tell you they have failed before. So it's important that we fail forward and not stigmatize business failure.
Mr. Taiwo, can you hear me, sir? Mr. Taiwo? There's a need for infrastructure in Nigeria.
Yes. I hope one entrepreneur is looking at this and they're taking notes.
Yes.
He is the entrepreneur that is awesome. Yeah. Mr. Taylor, can you hear me? Oh yes. While he's still sorting out his system, right? There is network problem. Dr. Roche, thank you so much for joining us today on our conversations. One last question that I want to ask you before you go, though, is in a real sense, though, would we say Africa's businesses are solving the problems of Africa?
Look, I think there are quite a number of amazing entrepreneurs who are, you know, who are doing amazing work on the ground, who are pioneering amazing work on the ground. You know, if you look at some of them in East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, if you look at some in Nigeria, some in the South also, there's quite a lot of entrepreneurs who are really pioneering new things, right? It's solutions in energy, solutions in water purification, and I think they are doing their best with limited resources, but I think we need more, right? I think we can always do with more entrepreneurs coming into that space. I mean, for instance, as Africa, we are so endowed with quite a lot of sun in the continent. We need to be exporting electricity to other parts of the world, right? Because we need to be capturing this and exporting it to other parts of the world. So yes, there are still some pockets of entrepreneurs that are doing very well, but we need more. I think for me, if we can have more entrepreneurs in Botswana who are pioneering, coming up with alternative energy, if we can have lots of entrepreneurs who are coming up with solutions to food security. So there are entrepreneurs who are doing that, but not enough. And I think we need more. We can always do more. And if we have more here in the continent, let's export to other parts of the world. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And let's export to other parts of the world. Let us be more export orientated and build markets outside of the continent. So we are not yet there. Hence, we are having issues like what we do now with Mr. Taiwa, where we can't connect to him, right? So for me, it shows that we need more. And until issues of connectivity are things of the past, I don't think we are there yet.
Thank you so much, sir. It is Africa in Conversations. We are talking all issues that are concerned to Africa. And as you have heard Dr. Roche Mamabulu, he said we need more entrepreneurs coming on board. We need more people standing up and being radical about their desire to go on business, because us as the people of Africa, if we stand in business, we are the same people that are going to impact the change that we need to see in Africa, the infrastructures that we are complaining about, the challenges that we see in Africa, all of them are waiting for us to stand up in business. Thank you so much for joining us today in African Conversations. We are talking conversations of concern to Africa. And I would love to really apologize for Mr. Taiwo there from Nigeria. He was supposed to join our conversations, but I believe next time when we talk more on entrepreneurial issues, he'll be there with us throughout the conversation. Thank you so much, and be sure to join more and more of our conversation.